During our time learning all there is to know about our virtual virus inside our head, also known as Johnny Silverhand in 2077, we get to piece together what happened during the events of Never Fade Away, the Night City Holocaust, as well as many interactions with other people from back in the day. However, Johnny is, as mentioned, just a soul or virus on a piece of hardware that was captured over 50 years ago. It's unsure what is actually Johnny and what is a false memory or a bit of AI data that is trying to piece together its own version of the story. Is the relic that Johnny is on heavily damaged, and as a result the memories of his are as simple as a piece of missing data? We aren't sure exactly how it works as a piece of hardware. We know the idea of what Soul Killer does, but the technology of the relic is still yet to be fully explored. Jackie Wells' engram at the end of the game, for example, although it's in Makoshi, is extremely lacking in memories or personality, as he just roams around saying the same couple of lines over and over again. This is most likely because he integrated with the relic for only a few moments before dying, and thus the data transfer of his consciousness couldn't be stored, and now his half soul is just roaming around featureless, only repeating a few things, unlike Johnny, who seems almost fully sentient. However, with that said, many other characters have claimed that throughout Johnny's whole life, all he did was lie, as they tell V to not believe everything he says. And so today I want to look into Johnny's life and compare it to what he told us in the game, exploring the lies and false memories. For this, we of course have to compare 2077 to the core rulebooks of the tabletop RPG games to see if we can actually work out what the true story is. So what do you think, Ducky Silverhand and Quacky Wells? Should we explore the past and see what really happened?
Ready to get your cherry popped? Yeah, come on!
Just fucking do it.
Awesome. Right, well, let's crack on with it, you mother duckers. If you're wondering what these amazing figures are, the guys over at Tubbs sent me these first edition versions of Johnny Silverhand and Jackie Wells in duck form and wanted me to show them off to you because they're pretty damn cool and go well with my other Cyberpunk merch. So if you're interested in these cosplaying ducks who are Johnny Silverhand and Jackie Wells, check out Tubbs to get your own with the link in my description below. They're super well made, really detailed, and such a great addition for anyone who is a collector of merchandise for franchises they absolutely love. Any Cyberpunk fan has to have one of these as they're absolutely awesome, but there are so many other franchises as well on their website, so why not check them out as well. Again, thanks to Tubbs for sending me these little guys, and with the ducks' help, let's dive into all of the lies and false memories told by Johnny Silverhand during the events of 2077 and prior. Johnny's first major lie in his life came from the age of around 16 or 17, and whilst most of us lied when we were teenagers, this is the lie that started it all, took him down the path that would be his life forever, and turned him into Johnny Silverhand, rocker boy legend and anti-corporate activist. This lie was about his age, as he wanted to fight for his country and join the army. Enlisted as a teenager, Johnny, or how he was first known, Robert John Linder, did not realise that he would be plunged into one of, if not the most corrupt wars the USA has ever seen. That one being the Second Central American War, where the dodgy US government at the time wanted to take over as much land as possible, including the Panama Canal, and framed it all as the US being defensive and protecting themselves from dangerous drug cartels in the South. Joining the army at such a young age became so damaging to Johnny because he saw the true horrors of war and those responsible for it. He saw what his country was forcing him to do. He learnt how to take a life before he could even drive or legally drink, but most significantly, and the very thing that triggered everything, he watched his best friend die in front of him after he had also lost his arm. A friend who had made sure to sacrifice himself to make sure Johnny survived and could go home once again. After that event, Johnny was a changed man. Robert had effectively died, and with his new changed personality, he made it his life's mission to expose all of the corporate world, and it all started because of what he thought was a harmless lie to get himself into the army for what I'd imagine he thought was going to be a great adventure and get him out of a life in Texas that was ultimately going nowhere. However, that said, later when Johnny is talking to V all about his past actions and how he lost this friend in a war, he goes on to state that the war was named the Mexican Mexico conflict, which is just either a lie or Johnny is extremely confused about the whole situation or misremembers it completely. The Second Central American War, which is the war he was most likely a part of and the one that links closely to the corruption, wasn't really fought in Mexico at all. It might have had some conflicts, but it was Nicaragua and Panama that were the two of the countries to see most of the conflict. At no point in his early life was he ever sent to Mexico to fight. He went to Nicaragua and then deserted the army after losing his friend and joined all of the other rebelling soldiers who did not want to fight in this corrupt war anymore. The only time that Johnny was said to have been in Mexico was after the events of Never Fade Away, when he attacked the Arasaka headquarters with his team. After that attack, Johnny and Santiago fled Night City and USA completely and stayed out within Mexico City with the Aldecados. But then they went back to the USA again after a few years, and at no point was there a mention of a conflict happening at all. It seems to me that this event has been confused in his head or in the data, because it absolutely wasn't the Mexico conflict. There wasn't one as far as anyone knows, so why he's remembering it as such is just a bit odd. And maybe it tells of some form of PTSD or trauma from that very incident, making this whole interaction with him in his old apartment seem that bit more tragic. Following on from that, obviously all of Johnny's memories of past events are from his perspective, but that doesn't always mean they are 100% fact of what happened, and that is shown throughout all of the planning of the rescue attempt for Alt. Luckily, within that true story, we get to view it from multiple perspectives. Alt within the Arasaka headquarters, trapped inside their mainframe, trying to create a new form of soul killer, Rogue and her infiltration within the tower, and even from the perspectives of the Arasaka forces, such as the commander in charge during the riots that was made to be a distraction. There's no doubt that Johnny played a major part in what was going on here, but it's quite clear that in his mind, he was the knight who was going to save the princess. He was the one who was going to be front and center during the whole operation and would make all of those vital calls. Starting with the meeting with Thompson, in 2077, Johnny immediately states that it was Arasaka responsible for the attack on him and Alt, which, I mean, makes somewhat sense because of his hatred for that corporation, but in the original telling of it, it is Thompson who has to reveal all of the details to Johnny about who attacked them and why, explaining to Johnny who Alt really was and who she worked for and what she'd been up to with Soul Killer, which Johnny refuses to believe. In fact, this whole venture is planned, set up and enforced by Thompson, who is an incredibly powerful individual who has a lot of influence in Night City. Not only is he a media who can spin a story in a heartbeat, but he is also an ex-soldier and knows his way around a gun and how to use them in combat, even housing a ton of cyberware that allows him to use smart rifles and grenade launchers, which he does within their mission, something that is not shown in the story at all. Rogue and Santiago are also reduced down to just helpers of Johnny, his backup forces for the attack, when in reality it is those two who charge into the headquarters utilizing Johnny's distraction to pull off their whole plan. And whilst the memory shows Johnny at the forefront of the attack, I'd argue it was Rogue who did most of the work, as she would completely confuse the Arasaka security and blow them to oblivion with parts of the tower as well. And that is probably down to the fact that it's from his perspective, so he could not see what Rogue and Santiago were actually up to at this point in time. But even in the car journey after meeting within the Atlantis, Rogue is told to be the one trying to take out the Arasaka forces charging them down, and Thompson is also the one that takes out the AV following them. In Johnny's memory, however, none of that happens, and instead Johnny is the one who takes out all three charging cars on his own and saves them from being captured and gunned down. Granted, this is all due to the fact that you have to make it enjoyable for people to play, and here you are playing as Johnny. But I do find it very interesting that throughout this whole mission, Johnny is front and center of everything that happens. He is able to deduct what really is going on, bring everyone together, hold a riot and charge headfirst into battle, and take out multiple vehicles charging them down. Ultimately, the end result is always the same, but it just gives us a little insight into how Johnny viewed this whole event, that he was doing a lot of the legwork and the others who were a part of it were just his backup and were there because they were just good, loyal warriors. Alt's death is truly a tragic tale for Johnny, and we do get to see that in his memory. However, reading the full story about what happened during this, we know Alt's death was far more tragic than shown and was more of a Romeo and Juliet type situation. End of the day, during all of this, Alt was in the Arasaka mainframe playing around with Soulkiller, but she had escaped the clutches of the Arasaka netrunners guarding her, and she was ready to take out her captors and go back into her body to continue once again, even taking millions of Eurodollars from Saburu's bank into her own account so that she could change her appearance and live a life away from Arasaka chasing her down. Ultimately, Johnny and his team breaking in to save her destroyed all of her chances, as Johnny would pull the cord connecting her to the mainframe and severed her connection to her body, which fully killed her physical form, making it that Johnny was the one that actually killed Alt as she screamed out to him from the other side of the net. Granted, this whole memory is what is happening in that moment for Johnny, but what I find odd about all of this is that Johnny states Alt reached out to him after this event and spoke to him all about it. Johnny also states here that Alt escaped and fled into the net, which isn't really true. She wanted to do that and then come back into the real world, but as mentioned, she was in fact trapped there thanks to his actions. Despite Alt seeming like a construct now, there is clearly some humanity in there, as she is still very protective of Johnny and only really wishes to speak with him when V enters cyberspace. I find it very hard to believe that during this whole venture in 2077, Johnny would not have told V about what really happened to Alt during this. Did he really not know still to this date that it was his actions that killed Alt, or is it something he just does not want to process still? It still seems like Arasaka is the big evil here for him, and they were the ones who killed her, which to some extent I suppose is true, but no matter how close V and Johnny get, it still seems like something he never discloses or discusses with them. And for me, that feels like something that he has never truly processed, and something the engram never really held on to. Maybe it's such a deep emotional struggle that the relic could not process it at all. Maybe this is a bit of a stretch, and maybe it's not a lie or misinformation moment, but I think Johnny has more to say about this whole situation, but maybe does not want to process it. Or, as I say, the relic never really captured how he felt about this moment in time, or the information told to him by Alt after her physical death. And maybe Alt didn't tell him at all, and if that is the case, then what is her reasoning for not telling him? The next memory is more of an error in terms of timeline because it makes no sense at all and is absolutely not what happened during this moment. This is at the start of the Militech mission to attack the Arasaka Tower in 2023 in what would eventually lead on to be the Night City Holocaust and the death of Johnny Silverhand's physical body. In 2077 we witnessed Johnny playing a gig with Samurai in front of a big crowd of people with his full band. This immediately is false information because during this point in time Samurai could not get all of their members together to play a gig at all. Originally it was said that they were doing a reunion tour in 2020. However, Johnny would endlessly joke about how they couldn't organise anything or play in an arena. The only thing that was remotely true was that in 2023, days if not hours before this event took place, Johnny was recording a new song named Black Dog in a studio, and actually, if it were to be finished, was to be released under the band of Samurai. Whether the rest of the band was present for this recording is unknown. However, this was the only thing that Johnny was doing in terms of music during this point in time. Definitely not a live show with Samurai. The idea that he was playing a gig, finished it, and then got to say a final goodbye to Kerry Eurodyne telling him he's got a great future ahead of him is just complete fantasy and feels more like a scene from a movie rather than a real memory. I also refuse to believe that Johnny would actually turn up to a gig and then immediately go on a covert mission to attack Arasaka. It seems like it has confused itself with the 2013 memory. Rogue turns up and grabs Johnny, making it seem like this is all brand new information for him as well, and that he has a few minutes to spare to blow up stuff in the name of anti-corporate activism. The whole timeline of events here is just a mess and goes to show that the closer to his demise he gets, the memories all seem to be a bit more jumbled. He wasn't playing a gig at all. If anything, he was in the studio beforehand, and maybe he did say a final goodbye to Kerry, but it all seems too convenient. Like with previous memories, I believe this is yet again Johnny diving into his ego, but also guilt, and thinking back to the best memories of his life. That being playing with Samurai and making a difference. The ego part may be believing that all of Kerry's success as a solo artist was thanks to him. He was the reason for why Kerry made the bold jumps he made, and now he did not need to rely on Johnny any longer. He was free to be himself and do his own music. Johnny had given him permission. It seems extremely egotistical of him that he views Kerry in this way, as if he is like a younger brother or someone who wants to learn from the legend of Silverhand, rather than a fellow equal band member. Maybe this was how they worked during this period of time. Kerry certainly seemed like he idolized Johnny, especially later in life, but that might have been the fact that he had come back to somewhat life after 50 years. But we do know that Samurai had many problems over the years, maybe due to Johnny being so arrogant. I mean, he is a lead singer after all. I've been in bands before and I can tell you, they are insufferable at times. There's also recorded lore that Johnny was sleeping with 2 of their members to keep them in the band, showing that he was a real manipulator, Kerry being one of them. But so many of his memories have him as the problem solver and the leader that I think this whole moment here in the memory is just yet another lie to himself that he was needed by Rogue in the moment and that he needed to say a final farewell to Kerry before it. He was now off to be the ultimate hero, again like a movie's final scene. I also refuse to believe that Johnny ever believed that he would be killed by Arasaka. I can't imagine he actually thought this was his final mission. But yeah, a bit of a messy timeline that certainly seems to be something constructed by Johnny in his final moments. During the actual mission in the tower, this is where we see the biggest misinformation that Johnny provides us, and it's something that is so confusing because it's the erasure of 2 people completely. These 2 characters were fundamental in the whole operation of it, and without them, this whole thing would have been a catastrophic failure. Those being Morgan Blackhand and Shaitan. I'll start with Shaitan because technically we get a glimpse of him during the flight to the top of the tower. When arriving there, this massive FPC or full body conversion warrior who has a bitter hatred for all things Arasaka mans the turret on the AV and starts firing. However, he is immediately taken out by someone and is just left back on the AV to recover. This absolutely does not happen in the true events. In fact, Shaitan is part of the reason Johnny's team survived for as long as possible, and during the memory there is a moment where Johnny is cut off by Adam Smasher and then it cuts forward. It is around this point in time where Shaitan actually is the one who attacks Smasher and forces him into a 1v1 conflict, pinning him down so that the others can escape. We will talk about Johnny's memory here in a minute because that's another moment that is extremely confusing and relates to Blackhand. Ultimately, Shaitan would be majorly injured by Adam Smasher and left within the tower during the nuke. However, he would survive thanks to the fact that he is a full body conversion and would eventually go on to help Rogue and Spider Murphy locate Arasaka and force him into Soul Killer, ultimately ending the 4th Corporate War. But the fact that Shaitan's whole story during this mission is reduced down to Johnny essentially taken over from him says a lot about Johnny. Johnny did take on Smasher one-on-one for a little bit before he was absolutely blown to pieces, but Shaitan was also there and jumped to his help, but that has been completely removed from the equation and it is unsure why that is. Maybe because Shaitan's heroics trumped Johnny's or something like that. Or maybe it was that Johnny was so injured during that point in time that he cannot remember anything about that moment, hence the edit in the clip. But that definitely could be said for Morgan Blackhand because he was the ultimate leader for this whole operation and was overlooking the other teams in which Johnny was a part of. Known all over Night City as the legendary solo who started it all, he was the top dog in everything, the perfect image of a solo. So is it any surprise Johnny did not include him in the story at all? It would have made him look lesser, and because of it his heroics might have been overlooked. In fact, once again, like with Shaitan, Johnny somewhat takes over Blackhand's role as well. Not once is it ever said that Johnny was the one who planted a bomb. In fact, through the words of the nomads who fought in this mission, who have also been removed from Johnny's story, he was just standing there with his silver gun in his hand. But no one knew why he was there, only thinking he was there because of the guilt of what happened with Alt 10 years prior. But also said that his team went down into the basement into the Arasaka mainframe where she was said to be located. The nomad also was the one who said they had to take with them a briefcase that they weren't sure what it contained, most likely being the nuclear device, but it was Blackhand who was said to be the one venturing up to the tower and most likely triggered the nukes. But more significantly, Blackhand was the one who had the final 1v1 fight with Smasher on the rooftop moments before the bombs went off, not Johnny as implied within his memory. This whole point in the memory is extremely confusing. Yes, it's easy to say that Johnny was jealous of their heroic actions and their status, but he died during this mission. Is that really something he would have kept a note on? Also, and we will explore this next, but Johnny supposedly died before the nukes went off as reported through Spider-Murphy and Rogue's story, which was also before the final 1v1 between Blackhand and Smasher. How would Johnny have possibly known about this information? How did he know about their coming together on a roof, or Shaitan pinning him down to save all of the others? Because that is something that happened moments after Johnny's death, according to the story. Something is certainly bizarre about the whole story of what happened in the tower, but one thing is for certain, Johnny is certainly exaggerating his role in all of it, which isn't surprising when you look at all of the other memories as well. But with their erasure from the story, it raises more questions. This is where we look into the final memory that is extremely messy and confusing, Johnny's death. Johnny's death is certainly believable, and to some extent it is pretty accurate. Ultimately, he does come face to face with Smasher and tries to distract him to save his friends, similar to what Shaitan does, and Smasher in the end blasts him in half and leaves him to die on the floor within the tower, not on the roof. This is where it all gets a bit confusing, and honestly, without that cut in the memory to the roof, it would have all fit perfectly because that is where Johnny is said to have died. Spider-Murphy is said to have run over to his body to try and save him, but Rogue tells her that he is gone and could not be saved. When getting to his body, however, Spider-Murphy is said to be the one who pulls out a data slug Alt had given her a long time ago and inserted it into Johnny's skull, whilst telling him she was so sorry. Many believe that this was the Soul Killer program, allowing Johnny's engram to be reunited with Alt once again, and with them meeting they would be able to talk about all prior events that took place. It's not confirmed that it was the Soul Killer program, but I cannot imagine what else it could possibly be. But then this makes his whole memory of the event make little sense. If his engram was taken by Spider during this moment in time, then how comes his memory continues on to picture him on the rooftop with Adam Smasher and then being captured by Arasaka and interrogated by Subaru himself? While it's certainly a plausible story and makes sense of how he became trapped in Soul Killer, it seems like it's almost the memory of someone else during that point in time. There's also little things in the final part of the memory that are just weird. For example, Adam Smasher fully blows off his cyber arm, but when he is picked up by Arasaka and interrogated, his arm is fully back on and working again, which just would not be possible. Smasher's gun is far too powerful and would have completely dismantled it. And what would be the point of Arasaka fixing it to then interrogate him and then just kill him all over again? There's also the fact that Johnny becomes incredibly remorseful of his actions. I'm not saying Johnny isn't an emotionless, non-empathetic individual. He might be borderline cyber psycho, which I've got a video of that coming really soon, but to suddenly regret his actions of blowing up the tower and killing people seems just a little bit out of character when looking back at everything he has been up to before 2023. He has a bitter hatred for all things Arasaka because of what they did with Alt, and to then suddenly be apologetic doesn't really ring true. Again, it feels like something that was added to the memory as he reflected on it for 50 years. Whilst I'm not the best in theory making, I feel like the removal of Blackhand says something about what is going on here and makes me question if some of the memories we see are not actually Johnny's but Blackhand's as well, that have found themselves trapped within Mikoshi as well, or they are manipulated ones by Arasaka. Maybe they grab some of Blackhand's story and put it into Johnny's to make sense of it. Subaru would absolutely use the Soul Killer on anyone he believed to be an enemy, and if it meant information on the attack of the Arasaka Tower, I definitely can imagine he'd have done this to Johnny. However, we do not know where Blackhand went after the events of 2023. There are rumours that he is still out there somewhere, but it's all a big unknown. If anything though, Subaru would absolutely relish the idea of capturing one of Militech's biggest assets of Morgan Blackhand and grabbing the data inside of him, as well as everything that made him the best solo out there. It's unfortunate that we don't know where Spider-Murphy has gone either, because maybe hearing her side of the story would be perfect for explaining what actually happened and how Johnny actually died. But if what she described was actually the true event, then there is no way Johnny could have been captured by Subaru, interrogated, and then had Soul Killer used on him, because at this point he would have been completely lifeless and half of a body. There has to be more to this story than just the memory of what happened in 2077, and that little cut forward within the memory is the key to all of it. Something clearly happened during that point in time that Johnny does not want to show, or it is something that he cannot show because that is where his full memory ends and someone else's begins, or where Arasaka have started to manipulate it. Once again, his ending is like something of a movie. He can grab onto the AV, reach up to his once love of Rogue as they lock eyes before he finally meets his end to Adam Smasher while all of his friends escape. It's truly heroic. But I do not believe that is how he actually went out, and it's either he's grabbed elements of Blackhand's memory of meeting Smasher on the roof, or Johnny has changed the memory to make him look that bit more heroic, or again, Arasaka has played a part in the manipulation of his memories. And that could be said about the memory of witnessing Subaru just before being taken by the Soul Killer. If I was to be honest about what I believed, I think Johnny has just altered his memory of his death to make him seem more heroic. Maybe he's spent the decades replaying it over and over and over again, and it's just become more and more disjointed. Arasaka Games writer Jay Gray described all of Johnny's memories like they were copies of photos. After a while they lose all of their detail and they become lower in quality, and I think being dormant for 50 years, Johnny has started to lose some perspective of what is true and what is misinformation, or what he actually wanted that situation to have become. We have to remember that the relic is majorly damaged at this point in time as well, so the data might have been corrupted at some point. A lot of these examples I've put in this video do seem to be like we are rushing through events, like they are just the highlights of events. And honestly, like many memories, there's only so much you can actually remember from things before it becomes a bit disjointed. Johnny isn't one of the nicest people to meet, to be honest. He cheated on multiple girlfriends, manipulated his band members to stay, lied about his age to be in the army, and did anything to help his cause. So when looking back at his life, it's no surprise that we raise an eyebrow when analysing previous events. However, I do think that a lot of these memories are altered because they are from the mind of a rocker boy who has been left to sit and think about his past actions for over 50 years in an Arasaka database that might have also been manipulating his own mind. Maybe he didn't say goodbye to Kerry. Maybe he didn't die on a rooftop or meet Subaru face to face when he got taken by Soul Killer, but maybe he wanted to, and that thought has infiltrated his memory and turned it into a half-truth and more of a wish of what could have happened. Or maybe it's as simple as CD Projekt Red retconned some of the lore related to these events to make the 2077 story make more sense. I would believe that. However, after speaking to Arasaka Games many times, they have told me that CD Projekt Red and themselves are very on it when it comes to the lore and what fits with everything in the universe. So for CD Projekt Red to change the lore like that, I don't really believe. And on top of that, I have asked about the changes they made to that lore, and they've been very secretive and only brought about more questions about what is going on. So I honestly believe these memories are misinformation on purpose, to make you think about what is and was going on in Johnny's head. But with that said, let me know what you think of the lies and misinformation Johnny's told. Why do you think the memories are the way they are? Are they the memories of an egotistical individual, or do you think there are more hidden layers underneath it all? Let me know in the comments below. I want to say a massive thank you for watching this video. It was certainly an interesting one to make, and I hope it causes a discussion in the comments below. Leave your theories as well, I really want to read them. A big thanks once again to Tubbs for these awesome Johnny Silverhand and Jackie Wells figures. They are so awesome, and when I do get to have them on my shelf when my daughter isn't parading them around the room, they do look great on display. You can check them out in the link below and get them for your own collection. Honestly, you will not regret it. They are really cute. Also, thanks to my patrons for supporting me again, including my small fishes, my YouTube channel Wise Ones, Video Gamer 75, Sith Lord 906, Planet Nanotarium, B3XXE and Ethan Feldman, my big fishes Tisminder Mine and Anthony Bonfiglio, my shark Dan F, my megalodons Hazy Thoughts and Sinus, and my incredible starfish Nanohertz. That is all for now though. Thank you once again for watching, and I shall see you all in the next one. Cheers.